Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you all grinding well in Warframe. Have you ever been so frustrated that you spent the entire weekend building meta weapons and setup so you'd never ever have to see another rando Wukong main ever in public squads again? I mean, nothing against Wukong, he's an excellent frame. It's just that when you play in certain regions, let's just leave it at that. So, speaking of meta weapons, in today's video, we'll be revisiting the Redeemer Prime and take a look at the sort of damage it can dish out in 2020, post Melee 3.0. It's something you may want to have in preparation for the new war as well, whenever that's coming out. Just saying. Also, I can't help but touch a bit on armor scaling a little later in the video. And not even armor scaling, it's more like EHP in general. It's a bit of a rant, so that might interest some of you more experienced boyos. So why would you want a Redeemer Prime in your arsenal? Sure, there are plenty of other weapons that are faster and more fluid for general gameplay, even for really high-end content. Stuff like the Current Prime and a Grineer Lens are all the rage these days. Something tells me not for long though. But sometimes you really feel a strong need to one-shot things and just get rid of the BS. High-level disruption missions are a great example why you may want massive power and as convenient a package as possible. I could use that as a selling point on my dating profile actually. By the way, if you use Limbo for disruption missions, please avoid from using Cataclysm around the conduit at all costs. Just please don't do it. It's not very healthy for you or others in your squad. Those Exo officers on Veiled Proxima level cruise ships are insanely thick. Even with 3 Cs actually, but with the right setup you could one-shot those with the Redeemer Prime as well, which may improve your survival rate by a lot, since those frickers deal more damage per second than this meme. Even if you do have your own meta weapon, which you believe is miles better than the Redeemer Prime, I think it still deserves a place in everyone's inventory as something to rely on for occasional use. I mean, it's better than a Rubico Prime or Lanka for Eidolons. It is, not joking. That alone should warrant a weapon slot, unless you have one of them rare purple things that cost lots of imaginary money. And if the sentient enemies in the Veil are a sign of what the entry-level mobs are going to be like in the Tau system, then we may be in need of some serious firepower. The fact that the Redeemer Prime is god-tier levels of power, while also being fairly accessible to relatively new players, makes it a must-have. I mean, there's no need for a power test, even, over here, because it just one-shots the level 20 Nox and Amalgam Machinist, even with 0 mods equipped. With a decent build, this boy can pop almost anything in this game, even at level 100. Don't believe me? Level 100 Nox, popped. Level 100 Heavy Gunner, popped. Corrupted Heavy Gunner, popped. Level 100 Drake Armenic Bombard, popped. Level 100 Terra Ambulus, Tingo's pop. Level 100 Isolator Bursa. Kinda unfair, you may think, to shoot it from the back, but that's how the enemy works, okay? So, popped. Even the Exo officers. Okay, that one was with Vex armor, but the fact that you could even one-shot those broken enemies is an amazing feat. Really, the EHP on an Exo officer at level 100 is mind-boggling. It is one of, if not the highest in the game. Okay, what about sentient enemies then? You mentioned the new war. Is this thing any good against sentients? Well, it is technically impossible to one-shot most of the sentients since they apply damage gating. I believe it takes 4 shots to kill a Symbolist at the minimum, and while I may not have everything scanned, I believe these guys have one of the highest EHP values in the sentient army, excluding bosses of course. But perhaps with a good sentient slaying setup, if you will, for example Excalibur Umbra with the Redeemer Prime may be an effective combo for fighting off sentient hordes. But we are slightly heading towards massive speculation with regards to future sentient content, so let's just agree that the Redeemer Prime is epic, and that it deals with ridiculous enemies rather easily. You may think it's OP and that it needs a nerf. Don't ever say that in public if you're not a YouTuber with a few fans to use as meat shields. But some of these enemies in Warframe, their effective health or EHP can get really ridiculous at times. And I'm not talking about level 200 and above even. Let's take this level 100 Corrupted Heavy Gunner Eximus, for example. It's something you'd see in a sortie, right? Nothing too crazy over here. Instead of the Redeemer Prime, I'm gonna use a Super Vandal, alright? Even with Vex armor, the performance here is just disappointing, especially if you put a few Forma in with the Riven. And it's not just the Super Vandal, this is the case with most primaries, heck even secondaries. Is this a problem with weapons not being powerful enough and needing a buff or rework similar to what melee weapons got? Or is this a problem with armor scaling and how the EHP of high level enemies just becomes too much to deal with? Now, I am aware that the dev team are looking at reworking the scaling with regards to armor, health, and even shields, applying something called an Scurve, which, I mean, I understand Scott's explanation during the dev stream, but we'll just have to wait and see how the actual implementation will turn out. Because if you're gonna apply a scaling algorithm that tapers off towards the upper end, does that mean a level 100 enemy will have just as much EHP as a level 300 one? These are questions that pop up when you have nothing to do in Warframe but just fool around with your pussy and the Orbiter. I mean, the cat, I mean. Everyone has a cat, right? If the game had a hard cap for enemy scaling, let's say level 100 is the absolute max, then I'd imagine that it would be a lot easier to balance weapons and content in general. But then you gotta consider that survival mode exists, and if you put a hard cap on the level that is anything lower than 9,999, it could become too easy for the power-crazed min-maxers. You could compensate by increasing the spawn rate of the enemies exponentially, but all of this is a topic for another video. My point is, the Redeemer Prime is good, and it can help relatively casual players deal with the ridiculous enemies without having to put in hundreds of hours worth of farming to build crazy setups, only to get blown up by a grenade. I don't know, I'm just salty these past few days. If you could relate, then please leave a comment down below, and feel free to share your personal meta setup that you use to deal with BS enemies. I'd love to read those. And if you'd like to get closer to the Marshmallow, there's a link to my Patreon page on the left here where you can find out how to get instant access to the Discord server right now. That's all for this one. Catch you guys real soon in the next video.